Oh, hi. You found me thinking about murder. Murder mysteries, that is. I'm Callie, and welcome to Kapowski Reads. And today I am going to be talking about my favourite Agatha Christie books. I am a huge fan of Agatha Christie books. Huge fan. I also have an entire shelf right here of my Agatha Christie collection. I don't have every book, but one day I will, and I will need more shelves in order to make that happen. I also love the TV adaptations of Poirot and Miss Marple. I'm talking about the ones on ITV. I do not acknowledge Kenneth Branagh as Poirot. I will not. I want those 3 hours of my life back from when I watched Death on the Nile. If you want to see me have a rant about that, I will post that video in the description. I did get very ranty, but I'm not here to rant. I'm here to talk about my 5 favourite Agatha Christie books, because November is the season for murder mystery, I think, and I love giving recommendations. Before I start, I would love to know if you have a favourite Agatha Christie book. Let me know in the comments, and maybe we have some favourites in common. So these are in no particular order, because coming up with only 5 was difficult enough. I'm not ranking them 5 to 1. That would just make me cry. So, the first one I'm going to talk about is 3-Act Tragedy by Agatha Christie. I don't know why I'm saying that. This is all about Agatha Christie. Of course this is by Agatha Christie. So, 3-Act Tragedy is a Poirot. This plot surrounds one of my favourite murder mystery plots, which is a dinner party gone awry. A very well-to-do gentleman organises a dinner party and he invites 13 guests. Very unlucky. And not all of those guests survive the dinner party, and it looks like the victim has been poisoned. However, once the glass has been analysed, it turns out that there was no poison in their drink. So what happened? What caused them to perish? And Poirot ends up investigating this mysterious death, for which there seems to be absolutely no motive. This is what I love about an Agatha Christie book. I love when you just can't, there's no motive. It doesn't make sense how this person could have been chosen to be bumped off, but nobody knows why. That is what just, definitely intrigues me, makes my own little grey cells start working. And obviously I'm not going to be giving any spoilers away, but this book is full of twists and turns, as one would expect. There is blackmail, there are secrets galore, and I just thought that this was such an exciting and fast-paced book. And I just love the way that I can never tell who did it in a Poirot, but I feel like that is going to be just the case for most people with this book, because as I said, there are no motives. No motives are known. So how can you tell who did it without any sort of just cause? And I just found that so exciting to read this and just try to find out some sort of direction so that I could also play Poirot and try to find out who did it. And spoiler, I can't. But I highly recommend this. It's very exciting and it's very reminiscent of just cozy murder mystery. Next up is Lord Edgeware Dies. And this one does have motive. This follows my favourite murder mystery sort of trope where the victim is deeply unpleasant. And then you're not sad. They're not real, so it's okay to be happy. Lord Edgeware, deeply unpleasant, referred to as monstrous in the blurb. His wife is overheard saying how much she wishes that she could just get rid of him. And then he's found stabbed in his library. Very Cluedo-esque. And all of the hints lead to it being his estranged wife. However, she has a cast iron alibi. It simply could not have been her. She was busy with a whole gaggle of witnesses who saw her there the whole night. She couldn't have left, couldn't have done it. So who did. And the reason why Jane, his estranged wife, wanted to get rid of him was because he wouldn't grant her a divorce. She wanted to marry somebody else, and he was not willing to end their marriage, even though they had basically separated. But it's discovered that he had actually agreed to the divorce. So now there's no motive and nobody knows who did it. And I thought this was just so exciting because I really, really enjoyed the estranged wife. I loved trying to find out who did it. There were a few people that maybe did have some motives. He was not a pleasant man. And I feel like we really got Poirot just at the top of his game. I really, really enjoyed this. And it just was filled with red herrings, which is what I look for. And I really, really enjoyed it. It is quite a short book, so it just felt like such a speedy, fast-paced book. And I felt like it was a wild ride. I loved it. Next up is Crooked House. And this book perhaps started my absolute love affair with books set in a grand house, because this is set in a grand house that is just a little bit higgledy-piggledy and is referred to as Crooked House because it's just had little bits added on and nothing really matches, which I just thought was just so exciting. And this is all surrounding the death of a very wealthy man called Aristide Leonidas, and he is found no longer alive, and his whole family are suspects. He lives in this grand house with his children, his wife's sister, and his children's children. So a whole gaggle of potential suspects. And as so often happens when one is a very wealthy old man living in a grand house, there's a lot of people with motives and a lot of family with motives. And this book does not include Poirot or Marple or any of the detectives that we know and love from Agatha Christie. But I think that that's what makes this book so special. The detective in this book is called Charles, and he is engaged to the granddaughter of the deceased. And I just really enjoyed the way that he just put everybody under suspicion. And it was just such... The ending of this book, I believe there have been a lot of, at the time, a lot of people not too happy with the twist ending of this book, but it felt perfect, just absolutely perfect. I did not see it coming at all. I had suspected, let's be honest, everybody else in this book apart from the person that it was, because it was just so well done that I was surprised. I absolutely love this, and actually I would highly recommend reading this because I love it and I like to think you will too, but I also recommend watching the film adaptation of this, which is on Netflix, or at least it's on Netflix in the UK, and it's got Glenn Close in it, and it's just magnificent. And I feel it's a really good adaptation because often the adaptations add or subtract elements of the book and they're not true adaptations, but they are enjoyable. And I feel like the adaptation of this is just excellent. I might go and watch it now. Well, not now. I have 2 more books to tell you about, and I love those books too, so I will do it next. The next one, this is when we go on to my gorgeous copies of Agatha Christie. The copies I've showed you already, they are gorgeous. However, the next 2 are more gorgeous. So my second last recommendation is Murder on the Orient Express. Again, I will not be acknowledging the Kenneth Branagh film adaptation of this book because it doesn't exist to me. Nope. This book is about a murder on the Orient Express. Simple as that. So Poirot is coming home. He's been away doing his detection and fixing murders, solving murders, and he finds himself on the Orient Express. And there he meets a whole gaggle of characters, various characters, and all of a sudden an American tycoon who when you meet him, you won't like him. He's found stabbed many times, and he's very, very dead. And Poirot is tasked with finding out who did it. And this is very much like a locked room mystery. So it had to be somebody on the train, but who? And this is a Poirot, but you do not need to know. That's the beautiful thing about the vast majority of Agatha Christie books, is that you don't need to have read any of them to pick one up. I feel like you could definitely pick up, well, any of the ones that I've mentioned and enjoy them. You don't need to know anything about Poirot, his previous cases. I feel like everything you need to know about Poirot, you will learn from the book that you have picked up. His character just comes across so perfectly. And I loved just how many twists and turns were in this book. I first of all loved that the victim was somebody I found deeply unpleasant. I love when Agatha Christie does that. I don't want to be sad about the murder mystery. I like it to be somebody who's unpleasant, because then it's better than if it was somebody who was nice. And I really liked finding out more about all of the suspects. They were such a varied cast, and it was really enjoyable as a reader trying to work out how any of these people could have linked back to the victim. And it's done in such a beautiful way that it's not obvious at all. There's a huge twist, and when that twist is revealed, it's still really hard to find out who did it. The grand reveal of this book is one of my favourite reveals of any book. It's definitely like in my top 5, as is the next book that I'm gonna talk about. The twists, oh, you don't see them coming. And anyone who reads it and says that they see it coming, then you're a very, very smart person, and good for you. But I didn't see it coming at all. This is a book that I happily reread now, even though I know what happens. I will happily reread my favourites, because now that I know who done it, I like being able to reread and try and see if, now that I know who it is, are the signs there? And yes, they are, but they're hidden within so much other information that I'm a bit overloaded with facts, and I still feel like it's an unexpected surprise. And my final recommendation for Agatha Christie, I think I feel very confident in saying that this is maybe my favourite ever Agatha Christie book, or at least is joint with The Crooked House, because I find it really hard to differentiate between the two of those. I love them both just so much. And yeah, so joint favourite, if we're doing it that way, which I wasn't, so that makes no sense, is And Then There Were None. This book started my love affair with books set on an island, a remote island. So I think we know where I get most of my tropes from, and it's Agatha Christie. Although she didn't write anything in a forest. That's probably the only one. This book is so good. This book is set on an island where 10 people receive invitations to that island, all coming from somebody that they sort of go, who's that person? I'm sure I know them. They wouldn't have invited me to their lovely house on an island otherwise. And off they pop to this island, not being 100% sure who has invited them. And everything's going fine until suddenly it's not. And the guests are plucked off one by one. And it's very interesting to find out why, because all of these guests are hiding secrets. These guests do not know each other, but one thing they do have in common is a murderous past. They've all basically been involved in the death of at least one other person, and they are going around just living their lives happy as clams until they find themselves on this island where, yeah, they're picked off. Each room has a frame of a poem, a childhood nursery rhyme, which is basically along the lines of there were 10, then there were 9, then there were 8, and then there were none. And that's where the title of this book, where the current title of this book comes from. I really enjoyed the way that the, this sounds so morbid, the deaths of the guests mirror the poem that is in each of the rooms. So I really found it interesting trying to predict who was next and how the death from the poem, the nursery rhyme, was going to relate to their demise. I found that very exciting, and I just really enjoyed trying to work out what was going on, because it felt almost supernatural. And again, the reveal of this book, this is one of my top reveals, because it's just, you do not see it coming, and I just found it to be just truly excellent. This is definitely one of my favourite books. Yeah. Not just Agatha Christie, of books in general. This is, it kind of feels a more, I mean, obviously it's a murder mystery, but it feels like a murder mystery that has elements of horror in it, because I feel like it's kind of horror, because after the first death or so, the residents realise that they're all getting picked off, and it's kind of haunting for them, waiting for it to be their turn. I mean, you don't want to just be a sitting duck when there's a murderer, but what can they do? And they're trying to work out who it was that was doing the murders, and if there's somebody else on the island, and it just feels like there's maybe some sort of supernatural element in there. I found it to just be so thrilling, and it just kept me guessing right up until the end, and that reveal was just amazing, because like I do so often, try to guess who did it, and I'm wrong all the time, and I thought I was right, and then I was wrong. So classic Agatha Christie, keeping me wrong. I absolutely love this. I think it's definitely one of my favourite books in general. It is one of the most amazing murder mysteries that I have read, and I've read a lot of murder mysteries that aren't Agatha Christie, but this is my top one. I do want to point out that the title of this book, And Then There Were None, is the new title. This book has previously had other titles, which I feel can only be described as being racist. They were the very, very old titles, but just because they're old doesn't mean that they were okay, because they weren't. So the book has been retitled, and that needs to be acknowledged. And I hope that you've enjoyed me rambling on about my favourite Agatha Christie books. This list is subject to change, but I feel like any future lists are still going to have at least And Then There Were None and Crooked House on them, because those are two of my favourite, they're my joint two favourite Agatha Christie books of all time, and I have read all of the main books. I've not read all of the Tommy and Tuppence, and I've not read all of the plays, but I have read all of the others. Yep. I was busy in the Peebles library as a child reading Agatha Christie. I was a cool person. We didn't have Sky TV or Channel 5, so my options were limited. I read a lot of books. Remember to let me know what your favourite Agatha Christie books were. If you've not read any Agatha Christie, then I would recommend hopping in with one of these 5, because, well, I love them enough to make a video about them. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!